by 1960, history in Elgin was at a turning point. A lot of the original members of the Old Settlers Association, which were a group of nostalgic-oriented people interested in the stories of the original pioneers from the 19th and early 20th century, had passed on. But there was a good cadre of local historians, educators, authors, novelists, and other people interested in preserving the city's history and legacy and bringing it forward for generations to come. Madeline Waggoner is credited with founding the Historical Society. She, along with Hazel Bell Perry, who was a friend of hers and a graduate from Northwestern and a journalist in writing columns on local history in the local papers. Leroy Morning, a history instructor at Abbott High School. Of course, Mike Elft and a number of other people at the time were interested in creating a historical society which would provide a formal structure for historical preservation and interpretation in the years going forth. In late 1960, a planning committee got together with the idea of forming an historical society. In January of '61, a formal meeting was brought together, and these people really had the insight to lay the foundation for a formal organization that could be carried on for a number of years. They incorporated as a not-for-profit, they elected officers, and they began to work on a series of goals and objectives. So after incorporating as a not-for-profit, the Historical Society began to accumulate artifacts and documents, photographs, and three-dimensional objects related to the local history. And they were beginning to bring these things together, and their collection was growing and growing, but they really had no storage space. The Gale Board and Public Library had let them use a portion of the basement. Other items were stored in people's houses and around town in various locations. Process of beginning to catalog and organize this stuff led to the idea that some of it should be put out on display as part of an effort, along with publications, to educate the community about the historical resources in Elgin. That momentum, that interest, kind of carried the society along as a project throughout the '60s. They really did not have the location in mind, nor the resources. It wasn't until Elgin Academy abandoned Old Main in 1969 that people began to look at the building not as a classroom building any longer, but actually a structure that could be reused, readapted as a historical museum. The story of the acquisition and renovation of Old Main is really a story that goes beyond the Historical Society. There were just enough influential Elgin businessmen and community leaders who were committed to the project to make it happen. There was just enough political support to get the city council to agree to eventually take ownership of the building. There was just enough in private donations to bring the building through a series of stages of renovation and rehabilitation. This effort took place beginning in the 1976 as a bicentennial project and continuing all the way through opening of the first floor as a museum in 1987. At the same time that there was a growing public interest in preserving this building, a visible public building, for adaptive reuse as a historical museum, there was also a growing movement within the neighborhoods, primarily on the east side of Elgin, for historic preservation of individual houses and homes. That led to the founding of an organization called the East Side Neighbors in '74, with an interest in trying to uplift a wide swath of the east side. Their area kind of spanned from the river eastward and south of Summit. In '79, the Gifford Park Association was formed, and their focus was on a little bit smaller geographic area where they could have a direct impact on that small community around Gifford Park, and then the larger area which became the Elgin Historic District in 1981. GPA, along with other community groups such as the Rotary and other volunteer associations and the Kiwanis and that, they contributed a lot of manpower and money to bringing the building to the first stage of renovation.